So here I'm gonna basically covering the endings of Allison and Laurie's stories and Halloween Ends. These will have at least minor spoilers, so be warned. I'm going to acknowledge Beyond the Mask, and as he said, I cannot finally confirm some of these details. These are speculations, but if you are curious where they're going to go with Laurie and Allison, and ultimately with Michael, then you can listen on. So we're going to concentrate on Allison, and then we'll get to Laurie. So what is essentially what happens with Allison in this story? Well, apparently she's going to become a nurse, and that's going to play into Corey. For those who are completely new, Corey will be framed for the murder of a child. He's innocent, but he gets a lot of bullies who hate him. Apparently, in one section, these bullies gang up on him, but Laurie saves him. He gets hurt, or something happens. He needs to be treated. Allison treats him as a nurse. They hit it off. It's unclear if it's a full-blown romantic relationship, but they do feel fascinated with one another, and they have this shared trauma, so they become at least friends or associates. But Laurie already starts to suspect something is going wrong with Corey. Corey continues to be bullied and tortured. Some of the bullies chase him down to the sewers. He meets Michael, but Michael is weak. He collapses, and somehow or other, or why, but they become kind of allies, and he starts to heal Michael and takes him to the junkyard. And from then on, he kind of feeds him victims. Corey himself becomes more obsessive and becomes more of a killer. Laurie suspects that something's wrong with Corey. Allison trusts Corey. She thinks that Laurie's going crazy. She's too paranoid. And eventually, the storylines are going to start merging. So, what happens is that Corey confronts Laurie. He has this kind of weird, kind of shouting match and says, I will win back Allison somehow. He decides to injure himself to confuse Allison and Laurie because apparently he is one of the copycat killers and he has done some brutal killings, but he's going to pretend to be a victim. Allison is very, very confused. She walks off, and then presumably Corey, as Michael, confronts Laurie. Laurie knocks him out, unmasks him. So now they know Corey is, yes, doing some of the killings, but it's not Michael. But they do suspect Michael has returned. And Allison actually tries to warn Laurie about this. So now we're going to get to the conclusions of the stories, and I will say they do sound pretty laughable. So with Allison, let's just wrap that one up. So somehow or other, Corey recovers. Apparently, Michael does not kill him. He and Allison have a kind of final confrontation, and apparently somehow Allison puts it together that yes, he is a killer. He's been lying to her. He is very damaged, of course, but he is kind of guilty. Something happens, and she pulls a gun, and then she shoots Corey, presumably in a house with 2 floors at least, and he flies backward and he drops like Michael did in Halloween 1978. So essentially, they're going to recreate Halloween 1978, but this time Allison is Loomis. She shoots Corey. He drops. Presumably, he's dead. Maybe they're going to add a twist. He's not dead. But that's basically what happens with their story. But now let's get to the real one, which is Michael and Laurie. This is going to be a little confusing because the trailers are a little misleading. So it does seem that Laurie, again, this is the Facebook ad. It's only a quick second, but it does confirm yes, Laurie does hit Michael in the chest. I would assume in terms of the struggle, it's going to go back and forth for a while, but essentially in the conclusion, Laurie, one, stabs Michael in the face, and two, somehow or other, gets Michael's knife, and that's the knife he uses to stab him in the chest. And the Facebook ad is very quick, but that 1 second does confirm yes, she does stab him in the chest. I don't think this is Corey. That would probably be too strong an injury. So that is what's going to happen, that Laurie somehow gets lucky and hits Michael in the face, then hits him in the chest. Michael collapses, then they grab Michael's body and then bring him to the junkyard. I've already done a video on the junkyard, but long story short, they basically bring him to the junkyard and just start decimating his body. It's an open question whether the townspeople join in basically destroying Michael's body, but basically, Michael does die. Now, does the shape die? That I don't know and I can't confirm, but at least one version of Michael Myers is dead. It should be the Michael Myers we've seen since 2018 because he's still missing the fingers, but they've opened up the copycat paradox, so it could be a copycat. Who knows? But one version of Michael Myers, yes, will be killed. He will be killed savagely. They will crucify him and presumably Allison will join Laurie at the end and help finish off Michael. Michael is dead, and they decide to forgive one another, and they leave Haddonfield, and that is it. Right? She's writing her memoirs, so presumably it's final voiceover narration. as we now know, they are debating different versions, so presumably the ending may have a tweak to bring back the shape. Does Corey really die? Does he come back? Is someone else going to take up the mantle? I don't know for sure. But those are the essential stories that Allyson leads Corey to Laurie. That's how Michael becomes involved. They're still not brother and sister as far as I know. Still a lot of questions like how she gets so lucky with her attacks. But I would say now that the super push that we saw, I think that's not Michael. That's probably Corey. So they are, I think, being reasonable in some places. So yeah, because that super push didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm assuming that's going to be Corey. Laurie does get a few lucky hits in, and apparently that's enough to take out Michael, at least temporarily, but then they finish the job. And they're just going to recreate Halloween 1978 with Allyson, and Allyson will basically take the role of Loomis for Corey. But again, they've reshot things. I cannot finally confirm all these details, but that will be the basic structure of Allyson and Laurie's story in relation to Michael and Corey. Tell me what you think. Does this sound ridiculous or plausible? I think it's pretty stupid with Corey and Allyson, but I don't see how else they would have ended it. It just sounded really dumb to begin with, so I don't know about that one. Michael seems at least plausible, but it'll be interesting how they build up his strength and then lower it, because why is he so weak all of a sudden? I don't know. So hopefully they'll find a way to close the gap, because it does sound a little iffy, but that apparently is the essential plot of what they're going to do with Laurie and Allyson and Michael and Corey. Thanks for listening.